Today I want to give you a few tips when it comes to buying your next phone used. So why should you buy a used phone? Well, that one is pretty obvious and straightforward, right? It is cheaper, and oftentimes a lot cheaper. Even at 1 year old, we are talking about 30, 40, sometimes even 50% cheaper. You see, phones depreciate similar to cars, and most of them depreciate the most during the first year, and especially when a newer version, a successor, comes out. And as there are many companies that provide years of software updates, it is financially a very sound strategy to buy used. Also, environmentally, it is obviously positive because you extend the lifespan of your phone and thus reducing the impact of electronic waste like rare earth materials or mercury and all sorts of harmful stuff that eventually ends on some landfill. And of course, each new phone that is produced also comes with its CO2 footprint. So yeah, buying used is good for your wallet, but also good for the environment, right? So what should you buy? Well, similarly to cars again, phones from different brands depreciate differently. And probably known to many of you, iPhones hold their value the best. Long software support, tightly integrated ecosystem, and most importantly, brand recognition. And Apple still carries some sort of luxury maybe. So yeah, people want to have iPhones, even 5-6 year old. So that's that. And to be fair, the experience you have with an old iPhone oftentimes is a bit better than with a similar old Android, but that's another discussion. And as an Apple user myself, I'm maybe a bit biased here. But the whole concept of brand recognition and how long the software support is universally true, as you see that Google Pixel phones do also very well here, followed by Samsung's flagship devices, whereas the likes of Xiaomi and OnePlus do produce great value devices, no doubt about that. But their brand still is not as strong, not as prestigious, and software support is also somewhat lacking, so they plummet really hard in terms of value. But what does all of that mean for you, the used buyer? Well, obviously, depending on what you need in a smartphone, what features are important to you, how much you want to spend, and how long you want to keep the phone, and so on, what phone you should look for is a very individual decision, right? But there are a few rules of thumb. Flagship Android phones, especially from brands like Xiaomi, OnePlus, but also to some extent Samsung flagships, are excellent buys at 1 year old. This way you still have a few years of software support left and you essentially get the phone 50% off. It is really wild to me how people buy those new, but yeah, whatever floats your boat. Then iPhones and Google Pixel devices can be good buys at any age really, because they get 5, 6 or even 7 years of software support and the depreciation curve is less steep. So those are especially great if you want to resell your phone after your use, or if you want to get an older model like a 3 or 4 year old one. Then overall, the cheaper the phone, the less attractive it is to buy it used, as the absolute dollar amount you save is not that big compared to the potential risk and hassle of getting a used one. And always keep in mind that most of the time your everyday experience with a used, slightly older flagship model will be way better than with a new mid-range or budget phone. Alright, now when should you buy it? Okay, so when your phone breaks or you lose it or it gets stolen or whatever, you obviously need a new one right now and then, right? But if you can plan your purchase a bit, there are a few times during the year that are better for your used purchases than others. The first one would be when you know which brand you want to buy, look out for when they release new phones. Apple, for example, traditionally releases their new iPhones in September. Samsung flagships launch most of the time in early spring, like late February, March. And so, after a new model comes out, there are many people who want to upgrade to the latest and greatest and sell their old phones. So that leads to a surplus of used phones, which is great as it lowers the prices due to more competition. And you also have lots to choose from. Second place here would be seasonal sales like Black Friday, for example, which are also great in that regard. First, refurbished phone sellers and Amazon Renewed and the likes might offer great discounts, which is good of course, but also a few days, weeks after these sale events, we have again a surplus of used phones, as many bought one during the sale and now want to get rid of their old ones. So if you don't find a good deal during Black Friday, for example, wait a few days and look out for privately sold phones. And then to a lesser extent, also the weeks after Christmas might be worth a look. The idea here is the same. People get new phones as gifts and sell their old ones. Simple as that, right? Alright, but what is a good price? Basically, you have to do some research here. Just look at sites like eBay, Craigslist, big refurbished sellers like Black Market, Refurbed, and so on, and look for your particular phone. That way you get a feeling for average prices, you get some sort of baseline. And then it is obviously dependent on condition, both cosmetically as well as technically. Like, are there any big scratches, dents, and how much battery capacity is left? Is everything functioning properly? But, I cannot give you any numbers here, as it all changes constantly. It's dependent on where you live, what phone, brand, and so on. So yeah, just please do a bit of research here, and also keep in mind that there will always be a difference of about 20-25%, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, between buying privately on Craigslist or eBay, or here in Austria on Willhaben, for example, versus buying from Amazon Renewed or any other refurbished seller. And yeah, both come with their pros and cons, which brings me to the next point. Should you buy privately or refurbished? I give you the short answer first. In the long run, it is definitely cheaper to buy privately, but it requires a bit more effort and a high risk tolerance. The long answer, well, first you're looking at the 20-25% you are on average spending more when buying refurbished. And in essence, what you get for that is basically the right to return your phone if something is wrong, not to your liking, as well as in most cases some kind of limited warranty of a year or so. So essentially peace of mind. And yeah, you don't have to negotiate prices and dealing with people, right? That might be a plus. And when ordering a phone blindly from some dude on eBay, you're obviously running the risk of being scammed. So when buying privately, I would either buy in person so I can at least see the phone, touching it before buying, or when ordering online, only when there is some kind of reputation, there's some kind of safety net. For example, here in Austria, our main marketplace, Willhaben, again, if we are ordering online, the seller only gets the money when the buyer has received the product. So in that way, at least you cannot get fully scammed, right? But still, of course, you don't have warranty and all sorts of things could go wrong. But I have bought lots of phones from private marketplaces, and even computers and headphones and watches and all sorts of stuff. And really only once I had a bit of a problem. A few years ago I bought a used iPhone X for my girlfriend that turned out to have a faulty speaker that was working but produced some sort of cracking sound. So yeah, but she still used it for a couple of years, so it was fine in the end. So when looking at the big picture, all the money I saved with buying privately far outweighs this one incident. And by the way, also buying refurbished can come with these issues. Only 2 weeks ago I bought a refurbished iPhone 14 Pro for my mom from Black Market for 700 euros. And mind that you can get the same model for 580, 600 when looking at private offerings. And when I first held it in my hands, I immediately noticed that there was something obviously off. There was an aftermarket screen, which in itself is okay, I guess, but it lacked ProMotion, lacked True Tone, and it was dimmer than her old iPhone 8. And all that for 700. So I had to send it back, and then this is also a hassle, obviously. So yeah, I would say in general, when you have a chance to look at the phone before buying, go the private route for sure. Which leads me to our last point here. What should I look for in a used phone? My personal tip here is get familiar with the specific model you want to buy. Watch some reviews on YouTube. If possible, test it out in the store, or test your friend's or family member's phone if they have such a model. And get to know how it should feel, how it should behave, what features it has and whatnot. Therefore, it is easier for you to discover anything that might be off when you finally hold your desired phone in hands. Then obviously cosmetic condition. Your tolerance for those imperfections might vary, of course, but keep in mind that a big dent in the metal somewhere might not be a big deal for you, but that big dent exists because of some, impact, big drop that might have also affected other internals like the camera system, for example. So just be careful. And then finally, the elephant in the room, battery capacity. So what would I do? First, ask yourself, how long do I intend to keep this phone and how much do I use it on a regular basis? Second, how much is it to replace the battery on the specific phone? And then decide based on that. Like, if I wanted to keep a 2-year-old phone for another 3 years and I really was a power user, then the offer with 79% battery capacity left is probably not the way to go. Or at least here I would need to add the replacement cost right from the get-go. On the other hand, if you plan to, flip your phone in a year anyway, it makes no sense to pay a lot more money for example, get a refurbished phone with a new battery, right? Especially when the price difference is almost always bigger than what you yourself would pay to get the battery replaced. And well, pretty obvious, I mentioned it anyway, don't forget that it obviously makes a big difference on how big the battery actually is. Like 85% left on an iPhone 14 Pro Max is still way more battery life than 90% on a small iPhone 12 mini. So yeah, in summary, just know what a replacement costs, how long you want to keep your phone, and then compare which offering is the best value for you. And if you're wondering how much you actually should pay for your phone in the first place, I've made an entire in-depth video about that, so make sure to check out that before buying your next phone. Alright guys, that's it for today. I hope you found that helpful, and I also hope that you have a wonderful week, day, whatever. Cheers guys!